In June 1944, this now silent village in the heart of France was buzzing with life.
As the lunch crowds in Oradour thinned around 2 p.m., over 200 Nazi soldiers, heavily armed, rolled into the town.
In just a few hours, almost every man, woman, and child was killed, and every home burned to the ground.
Before it became a name whispered in horror, Oradour-sur-Glane was a picture-perfect slice of France, a small countryside village cradled by the River Glane, just beyond the suburbs of Limoges. Fields rolled endlessly into the distance. The air carried the smell of fresh bread from the boulangerie, and laughter echoed through cobblestone streets. It's hard to imagine that this peaceful postcard scene could vanish in a single afternoon. With a population of around 1,300, it was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. Children raced each other down narrow lanes. Farmers sold fresh vegetables in the square. Locals lingered in cafes for long conversations over wine. In 1944, this tight-knit community had no idea their names would soon be carved into history, not for how they lived, but for how they died. Visitors from the city often arrived thanks to a tram line linking Oradour directly to Limoges. The journey ended in a bustling little hub, hotels, a popular wine shop, cafes serving meals any traveler would praise. That tram, once bringing visitors and joy, would soon carry news of the unspeakable. But Oradour was more than just a French village. It was a refuge. Franco's Spain had driven many into exile, and some found safety here. French Jewish refugees came too, believing the countryside would shield them from the dangers that prowled Europe. For those fleeing war, Oradour felt like the safest place on earth. And that's exactly why its fate is so haunting. Landmarks told the story of daily life. Avril's Hotel welcomed travelers at the entrance to town. Monsieur Denis' wine store was the social heart of the main street, and at the center, St. Martin's Church stood tall, a place of worship, community, and tradition. In just days, that church would become the darkest place in Oradour's history. It was a Saturday afternoon. The sun was high, the streets were busy, and life in Oradour-sur-Glane felt normal. Then, around 2 p.m., the sound of engines broke the calm. At first, it just sounded like heavy trucks. But what rolled in wasn't commerce. It was death. Over 200 heavily armed Nazi SS troops surrounded the village in minutes. They came from the Das Reich Division, battle-hardened soldiers fresh from the Eastern Front. Their orders? Unknown to the villagers, but the rifles in their hands left no doubt. Something was very, very wrong. No one knew. They had just been trapped inside a killing ground. Men were separated from women and children. The men herded into barns and garages, the women and children locked inside St. Martin's Church. It looked like they were simply being detained, but that was the cruelest deception of all. Gunfire erupted in the barns. The men were mowed down in bursts of automatic fire. Then, blankets were thrown over their bodies and set on fire. The flames weren't just meant to kill. They were meant to erase. Inside the church, smoke began to fill the air. An explosion. Then machine guns. Then fire. Mothers clutched their children, the stone walls echoing with screams, until silence. In less than 2 hours, Oradour's heart had stopped beating. When it was over, 642 people were dead, men, women, and children. Only 6 survived, slipping away in the chaos. 6 lives to tell the story the Nazis hoped would vanish with the smoke. The soldiers moved through the village, setting fire to homes. Only one building was spared at first, Monsieur Dupique's draper shop. It was stocked with fine goods and over 20 bottles of champagne. The SS spent the night drinking there before burning it too. They left nothing behind but ash, twisted metal, and silence. The man leading the attack was SS Major Adolf Diekmann. His original mission? To go to the nearest town, take 30 hostages, and use them as leverage to negotiate the release of a captured German officer. 30 hostages, not a massacre. So how did this mission turn into mass murder? The official German version claimed the officer was being held in Oradour-sur-Glane, but records suggest otherwise. He was actually being held in another village, Oradour-sur-Glane. One letter different in the name, and an entire village paid the price. Some believe Diekmann simply misread the orders. Others say he wanted to make an example, to terrorize the French resistance by wiping a community off the map, whether by mistake or by design. The outcome was the same. An act so brutal it shocked even the German high command. Even Berlin raised questions about the scale of the killing, but by the time any inquiry began, Diekmann was dead, killed in action just weeks later in Normandy. The truth about his motives died with him. And so, the why behind Oradour's destruction remains a shadow in history. From that moment, Oradour-sur-Glane wasn't just a village. It was a scar, a warning, a symbol of what happens when human cruelty meets absolute power. But the worst part, the ruins you see today are exactly as the Nazis left them. When the smoke cleared, Oradour-sur-Glane was no longer a village. It was a graveyard without headstones. Every wall, every street, every stone was now part of a crime scene the world would never forget. The homes stood as blackened shells. Roofs had caved in. Furniture was reduced to ash. Metal beds were twisted from the heat. On the main street, the charred frame of a sewing machine sat exactly where it had fallen. It looked as if time had stopped, in the middle of someone's life. The St. Martin S. Church, once the center of community, was now the center of horror. Its windows blown out, its altar blackened, its walls scorched. Inside, the silence was deafening. For those who entered after the massacre, the smell of smoke and death lingered for days. When General Charles de Gaulle visited the site after the war, he made a decision that would shape its future forever. The ruins would remain exactly as they were. They would not be rebuilt. His reasoning was chilling in its simplicity. France needed a permanent reminder of what happened here. Plaques were placed on walls. One of them bore the words that still greet visitors today. Souviens-toi, remember. Because without memory, the world risks letting history repeat itself. In France, Oradour-sur-Glane is not just another village. It carries a title heavy with meaning. Le Village Martyr, the Martyr Village, a place that died, so its story could live forever. This wasn't just about honoring the dead. It was about preserving the truth exactly as it happened in 1944. Every scorched wall, every rusted bicycle frame, every silent street was left untouched. Step into Oradour, and you're not looking at a reconstruction. You're standing in 1944. Historians, survivors, and visitors describe it as walking through a ghost village. Sarah Farmer, author of Martyred Village, says, "Through no fault of its own, Oradour became the target of Nazi barbarism. It's a story you can't just read in books. You have to feel it in the air." The preservation wasn't for tourism. It was for testimony, a living courtroom, where the evidence is the village itself. Here, the ruins are the witnesses, and they've been testifying for 80 years. School groups still come to learn. Survivors still return to remember. And each visit passes the responsibility forward, because remembrance is not passive. It's an act of defense. Forget Oradour, and you risk opening the door to the next Oradour. Just a few hundred meters from the ruins, a different Oradour stands. Fresh paint, modern homes, children laughing in the streets. It's hard to believe these two villages exist side by side. One was frozen in 1944. The other was built to move forward. Between 1947 and 1953, France constructed the new Oradour-sur-Glane. Same name, same spirit, but not the same streets. Here, life could be lived again, without the shadow of daily grief. The ruins would hold the memory, the new village would hold the future. Shops opened, schools welcomed students, the market bustled, just as it had before the war, but every resident knew, just down the road, was a silent reminder of what once happened. It's the only place in France where the past and present share the same heartbeat. Some families moved into the new village immediately. Others could not bear to return. Too many memories, too much loss. For them, Oradour was not rebuilt. It was buried. Today, visitors often walk both villages in the same day. The new Oradour shows resilience. The old one shows the cost of forgetting. Together, they tell the full story, hope beside horror. Today, anyone can walk the streets of Oradour-sur-Glane. The visit is free. No ticket, no tour required. You simply step into a place where time stopped in 1944. It's not like visiting a museum. It's like stepping into a paused moment of history. The road into the old village is quiet. Stone walls crumble, rust creeps across abandoned cars. Shop signs hang exactly as they did 80 years ago. There's no music, no chatter, only the sound of your own footsteps. Every step feels like you're trespassing on someone's unfinished life. The St. Martin S. Church still stands. Its charred walls, its broken windows, pull you in, but the silence pushes you back. Visitors often describe a physical heaviness inside, a weight you can't explain. It's the kind of silence that speaks louder than any words. Scattered through the ruins are plaques with the same haunting phrase, "Died for France." They're not just memorials, they're reminders that the people here were not soldiers. They were civilians. You don't just read those words, you feel them. Across the road, the Centre de la Mémoire tells the broader story, from the war's beginnings to the massacre's aftermath. Many visitors leave in silence, some in tears, because when you leave Oradour, a part of it leaves with you. Oradour-sur-Glane is more than a place. It's a message carved into the earth, a warning from the past that refuses to fade. The ruins remind us how quickly peace can shatter. One moment, it's everyday life, work, school, family dinners. The next, it's smoke, fire, and silence. The gap between normal life and disaster is thinner than we think. It's also a reminder of how lies, fear, and power can be weaponized. The people of Oradour were not soldiers. They posed no threat. But in war, truth often dies before people do. When humanity is stripped away, logic doesn't matter. Preserving Oradour ensures that future generations see, not just hear, what happened. It's harder to deny history when you can walk through its evidence. That's why the ruins are still here, so the world has no excuse to forget. For France, Oradour is both grief and pride. Grief for the lives lost, pride in the decision to keep their story alive, unaltered and unsoftened. It stands as proof that memory can be a weapon against repetition. And for the rest of us, Oradour is a mirror. It forces us to ask, what would we do if the unthinkable came to our doorstep? Because history doesn't repeat itself on its own. People repeat it. The Nazis tried to wipe Oradour-sur-Glane off the map. They failed, because as long as someone speaks its name, the village still lives.